Here we are. We are live now, and good morning to everybody watching the podcast of Japan
Good
Expert
morning.
Insights with a very special guest today. We've got Kei Izawa Sensei. Probably you have already met him on LinkedIn, and you know that he's a seventh degree black belt master in Aikido, and that's why we call him Sensei. So, yes, he has had a very long career both in business and in Aikido. And today we're going to talk about his career and how he juggled different things, and also talk about the book he wrote recently and published recently, which is called Balance in Motion. So, Balance in Motion is also the title of today's podcast, and that's also something that I hope you enjoy listening about. So, okay. And, yes, yes.
Just a quick. So yeah, we met offline, had a very nice chat, and I was so impressed. Really, I feel Izawa Sensei is appropriate, not only because of the Aikido, but your depth and the breadth of experience that you have is just so impressive, and so. I feel very lucky to have you on. So thank you very much. I know everyone's looking forward to hearing what you're going to talk about today. So I just
Yes.
wanted to kind of preface it with that.
And welcome, Izawa Sensei.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you very
welcome.
much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's my honor, and I am pleased that people like Maya-san and Tim-san have been putting programs together to promote many things out of Japan, and it is thanks to people like you that proper information about Japanese culture. In many fields, people get to know. I enjoy listening to Tim San's guitar music as well. So, and so if I can be even a little bit of contributor for additional information about Japan or Japanese martial art, I'll be happy to be of assistance.
Well, no, and you're going to add a very interesting dimension of Japanese culture just based on our last talk. But I think I can speak for Maya when I say that. Well, personally, people say, "Oh, Tim, you're retired. Don't you miss your job? I mean, don't you want to get back at work?" And I thought about it, and the thing is, I love promoting Japan, like Maya does too. That's
Yes.
fun. So just because I'm not necessarily making a living doing it doesn't mean I can't do it and enjoy it and find it fulfilling. And when we have guests on like you, it continues to broaden it. You think you only know what you know, and you think, okay, I'm getting there. And then somebody comes and gives you new information. You're like, oh my God, I didn't know. That it's broader than that. And you're one of the people who add that dimension. So I appreciate your perspective today, especially about culture.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and I wanted also to just, if you don't mind, Isao Sensei, to share your story. It could be a brief, let's say, a brief story, or it could be longer, depending on how you want to tell it. But talking about you, so you were born in Japan, and then you moved overseas because of your work. Would you please tell us a little bit about that? How it went, and yes.
Well, I was born in 1949. I will be 76 this year, but my father was in the diplomatic corps, and as soon as the San Francisco Peace Treaty was signed in 1954, the work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was reactivated, and he was sent at that time to Cuba. And naturally, I joined. The family joined him in Cuba. This is the time before Fidel Castro. This is in the time of Fulgencio Batista. Cuba was the epicenter of, I think, it was like Las Vegas in those days. Of course, I don't remember. I was a child, but my parents sent me to a school called Lafayette School, and they were teaching in English. And I would come back home and play with neighborhood friends in Spanish. And my parents saw that I was struggling in combining these three different languages. So they decided to talk to me in Spanish because they were fluent in Spanish. So soon I forgot all the Japanese, and my father was assigned again to another country. So in the end, I ended up 7 years of my formative years also in South America. And when I went back to Japan at the age of 11, I couldn't speak Japanese. I couldn't read nor write, not even hiragana, katakana, and no kanji. And that's when the pressure starts coming, because all the kids in Japanese schools were prepping to advance to the next stage, whether it's high school or university, and many were going to jukus.
Right.
And I'm not cramped schools, and I'm not even at that level to go to a cramped school. And the Japanese kids in math, they could do soroban in those days, and the abacus, and they were fast in arithmetic. They have been reading for quite some time, so I wasn't even brought up with Japanese folklore or children's music, nothing like that. So I'm thrown back to a system that was totally alien for me.
Mm.
And yes, I was Japanese, and I thought I felt very Japanese myself, but I couldn't communicate very well with the majority of them. So through that, I started to observe many things that my question was, why do they do this way? Why do they do that way? And for example, I had to do shodo, shuji, Japanese calligraphy, and I didn't even know how to hold the brush. I had to hold it vertically and do it like this, sitting quietly. I had to clean the classroom. I would go in the middle of winter. It sounds funny nowadays, but with a bucket to bring coal so that we would start our own stove. So for me, the community, because even the Kyushoku school lunches, we had to go and get it from the kitchen, and we would take turns to serve other classmates. For me, it was very strange experience, but I liked it. And when we would play during breaks, children would do sumo a lot. And I was one of the tallest. I am 181 in height. Maybe I'm shrinking because I'm getting old, but I was one of the tallest in the class. But everybody except one boy beat me, and I couldn't win. They were so strong. And I thought, why is it that the Japanese kids have such powerful martial arts schemes? And saved me was that in South America, I was very good in swimming. So I became the top in my elementary school in swimming. So mentally, I was okay. I could balance that. In swimming, I win, but in sumo, I lost to almost everyone. The only boy that I could manage to win was someone that was suffering from asthma.
Mm.
So
Right.
when I feel like that, people will look at me and say that this strange guy comes. I had Wrangler jeans, I had basketball shoes, I had hairdo, I had hair pomade, as they call. I was very neat, and the Japanese kids had
Oh,
strange cut.
Right, yes.
I looked totally
oh,
different. Yes. So that was the beginning for me. And after that, I had to study hard because I could see that unless the kids of professional families in the neighborhood, like Yaoya-san, vegetable shop, and this and that, I could see that they were not interested in advanced education, but the others were ready to go to the next stage. And the focus that they had was something that I couldn't understand why they were studying so much. My parents decided to hire a tutor that came. She was from Kyoiku Daigaku. I
Mhm.
think now it's part of Tsukuba Daigaku, perhaps. And she came 5 days a week to teach me how to read, write, and prepare for school. So Osaka Sensei was her name. And this was the studying attitude of the Japanese was crazy. I know that all of Asia is the
Yes.
same. If you go to Korea, if you go to China, Taiwan, Singapore,
Yeah.
education is very high.
Hmm.
And coming from South America, for me, this was, they wouldn't play. So
Hmm.
that was very phenomenal. So uh, I struggled every day studying. So my years up to university were relatively dark because I had to immerse getting ready for the university exam. And finally, I managed to enter into Keio University, which in those days was very difficult. I don't know the situation now, but
It's the same now, yes. One of the,
it was
yes.
very, very difficult for me to get ready. So many of the things, even after as I came fully adult and professional, when I joined General Motors and I was sent to Japan again to restart the Opel business in Japan. I did many things that many Japanese said, Izawa-san, you don't do those things in Japan. And I said, why not? And so my perspective has always been a little bit off for the Japanese, but I had a very successful time in Japan. So
yeah.
I don't
That's
want to go too much in that direction, but if you have any other questions.
no. I think that really sets the tone for a lot for me too, because it gives us a sense of who you are. I mean, that's some serious trauma coming back to Japan at
Yeah.
11 years old. And in a sense, you were like everybody had an 11-year head start on you when it came to playing game in Japan. When it came to playing the international game, I could argue the opposite. You had a head start on them because you already had several languages in your head as a young child, which that alone creates even more brain power. I mean, your prefrontal cortex develops faster when you speak several languages as a child. So it in that sense. But so everybody had a big head start on you,
That
and
that
yet
is very true.
you found the fortitude, the wherewithal to not only catch up but to get into, that's like the Harvard of Japan, like one of Japan's best universities, right? Even
Yes.
today,
Yes.
it's right up there. And you mentioned how like you were struggling at first, but there were some things you liked, And as you were going through it, and Maya and I were talking about this the other day, the idea of process, everything has a process here. It's either spoken or unspoken, but it's all process. It's just woven into the culture. And on the one hand, it gives you these like kind of default rules and guidelines, which are great if you grew up here and you know them, But if you're an outsider coming in, all that unspoken stuff, and that everything has a process, everything has a way, and there's benefits, but there's also setbacks, like everything. There's pluses and minuses, right? And as a freedom loving foreigner, and you may have felt the same way. Sometimes you like the process, but when you don't, it seems confining because you think, I think I could do this better, or there's a different way for me that works for me, right? Did you feel any of that? Or is that just me reading too much into it?
Well, I agree totally. One very peculiar thing that happened to me is that in middle school, in high school, my English teachers always treated me badly. And if I would pronounce somewhat differently, they would correct me. So I never got 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 5. They always had something to criticize me. And I think they meant to crush my ego because I had probably an accent different from the teacher.
Right.
And he didn't like that. Or there were many English teachers in between. But it wasn't until that I took the national tests for English. And as you know, Japanese English is taught in a way that you create some questions that are very tricky, and there's not much substance in my mind. It's not conversational. It's memorizing the jukugo, the combination of the verb and some adjectives and things like that, and to check how to deduct points. I think that's how the Japanese taught. But even though in school I never received the highest grade, when I took the Obunsha nationwide test, I was in the 0.3 top ranking. And the teachers couldn't believe it. But I think it was a problem that they had.
You cheated. That's what they thought.
I think for them, that their pride or their system of teaching, Japan still struggles with teaching English education, right?
Yes.
Foreign language education. So.
Well, they should have been applauding you because they could make themselves believe that their method worked.
Well, I think there is something different there actually, because we know,
jealousy.
yes, I wasn't going into that direction. So if you allow me to just
Sure.
veer a little bit, into a different one, I think that here in this part of the world, especially in Japan, and maybe maybe not so much, but still in Korea and China. So basically, there is people believe in improvement, right? The Kaizen thing. And so even though everybody understands that there is no perfection in this world, they still want to get as close to perfection as possible. And while probably there was some jealousy there, in your teachers, I believe that they wanted their students to be as close to perfect as possible in their
Could be.
minds,
Could be.
right?
And
And
it's a very
also,
negative approach,
it is a very negative
from the
approach,
Western
yes.
perspective. Yeah.
Yes, from a Western perspective, but here I have also read that basically the mindset in Japan is that if you fail at an exam or if you're told that you're not there yet, basically you start learning and studying harder. And so maybe there is something of that there too.
I tend to agree that this is even in Aikido. I started Aikido in 1969, and that was the year that the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, passed away. And all the instructors in the Aikido headquarters, world headquarters, were basically direct disciples of the founder. Aikido in those days, there were kind people, but the majority of people were very, very strict. And I can mention a few names, but nobody took a position. You've done very well. Keep doing. You're going to grow. Very harsh. Even the techniques were harsh.
Yeah.
But now Japan has come to a stage that if you take a very aggressive stance and if you hurt some of the students, the parents or someone may come to complain. So suddenly it's softening. So
It's the same in education. My wife was a teacher. And
I
she
see.
said, and she doesn't do it now, but she said, compared to when I was growing up, the parents come and battle with you.
Mm-hmm.
While when she was a little girl, they expected you to be really harsh and
yes, slap on the face was quite acceptable.
But me too. I went to a Catholic school, so nuns used to. They went after us too. So, but Japan is very like apprentice system focused, and to Maya's point, and I've observed this in the past. Sometimes I would see a Japanese boss picking on us. It looked like to an American he was picking on a subordinate. But when you talk to him later over a beer, he's like, no, that person is really good. So I want to make sure, like, I see promise. And if I didn't like him, I'd just ignore him. I wouldn't give him any work. And so it's hard for Americans to see that, but it's
Right.
kind of a badge of, honor that he cares about you. Or at least that's how, I'm not saying it's a good way and it works with everybody, but I think the
Well,
intent sometimes was there.
I think both of you indicate a system that the Japanese have used. But the problem in that is that they cannot communicate. They don't know. The Japanese are very bad in conveying why they're trying to be strict. So
Even in their own language.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
yep. The why. They never
was
tell you why.
for the, I think it was close to Tokyo Olympics. The Japanese volleyball team was led by a coach named Daimatsu Kantoku, and he was known to be very, very harsh. And I think he would make all the women players, athletes, cry. But they got the gold medal. And things like that. So
and then it
I'm with you.
validated that hard ass approach because they got the gold medal. Right?
Unfortunately, but I think is the Japanese use too much ishin denshin. That you expect the other person to understand without verbal
Verbalizing. Yeah.
explanation and things like that. And if you are not in that culture, as you say, when Americans or foreigners go to Japan, they don't know. They get puzzled as to why the Japanese are behaving like that.
Right.
Very much so.
Even if you learn Japanese and you understand every word they just said to you, you're like, what are they trying to say? And
Right.
I'm lucky I have a Japanese wife, so I will always later I go, what was he trying to say? He goes, even in Japanese. And it's kind of heartwarming when even my wife doesn't know. Like she'll do that, but she has options in her head on what it might be, but not
Right.
necessarily yeah. So
And
that's
I think it's very often the case, actually, that the answer is never only one. So, in their heads, the people who are born and raised here in this culture, they know that there are usually at least a couple of options of or interpretations. Let me say interpretations, right? Of what the other person said, and
yeah.
most often, quite often, actually, people really misinterpret the other person's intentions. But at the same time, it's funny because always, the interaction comes from good intentions. And when I say that these are good intentions, they're baked once again into the mindset here because people don't want to step on the other person's toes, right? They're
Yeah.
very careful not to offend, not to damage the image of the other person. So it's really a very delicate dance, which is so difficult to understand for foreigners.
I have to say, when I went to Japan back in 1991, and I was given the task to relaunch the Opel brand in Japan that was struggling. And Isuzu Motors and Toho Motors, two distributors were selling. But in those days, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, they were doing very well. And many Japanese automotive journalists would say, we don't need a German Corolla coming to Japan. We already have German cars in Japan, so don't bother coming. That's what some very famous automotive journalists mentioned. So the challenge for me, being Japanese, going back to Japan to resuscitate, revive, or strengthen the presence of Opel, became super important for me. And I had to do things out of the norm. And Isuzu Motor Company, a very reputable, good company, but they were very conditioned to the Japanese way of behaving, and they had contracted Dentsu to become the advertising agency, and the budget was so small that probably Dentsu assigned one of the least productive account managers, and I would talk to him and it wouldn't make sense. For me, it was what value added do you bring? So I said I need to revisit the whole thing, and I went to the dentist. In those days, it was in Tsukiji, and they said, Izawa-san, your competition, other German brands are putting so much money in advertising, and that's how they increase the brand awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And you spend so little money, so your brand awareness is almost close to zero. So they said to me, your task is to get more money from your headquarters so that you can splash.
Bigger budget. Yeah.
Yes. And I said, what is the value added that Dentsu brings? And I was 42, about 42 years old. And I was surrounded by people that were much, much older.
Yeah.
And they, I think, underestimated me. And they kept saying that your only job is to bring more money. Dentsu people, in those days, the newspapers, in one-page advertising, the Jugodan, the full-page advertising in Asahi newspaper cost 45 million yen. And if you and we know that Dentsu in those days was getting about 15% commission out of that automatically.
Yeah.
So if they were to just post TV advertising, this and that, they were getting tons of commission. And I said, what's your value added? And they said, oh, we have media mixture that nobody else can provide. And I said, I'm not satisfied with that. And I will put this into competitive bidding, and I will ask other companies. So the bucho, the manager of Isuzu, grabbed me later and said, Izawa-san, you don't do those things in Japan. And I said, why not? They haven't proven that they can be effective. I need to find a way. So, and the story goes on. I'm writing my second book, and I will post much more detail, the story of the business side that I have done through Aikido and business. So
Yeah.
maybe I hope you can invite me again for.
Oh, very much.
This
Yes.
would be a good segue to get to your book. And it's just interesting what you're saying about Dentsu. I have good friends in the advertising industry, and my understanding was the Dentsu's value added is their thorough and complete control of the media spaces, their connections, because they can take away your value by blackballing you, by not allowing you into certain media spaces, and you got to be licensed to deal in the media. But I agree with you. You're thinking value added, like from a creative standpoint, to get the awareness out, and they're just selling access. It's what I felt, But
well,
yeah,
they also would invite me. The newspapers, Jomu in charge of advertising, they would want to invite me to play golf, or they would invite me to go to Ginza for some drinks.
yeah.
I never accepted those. And as to golf, I said, golf is the product name of our competition, so I cannot play golf. That was my excuse. But I'll be happy to let you see. But
Oh, yeah.
Operu no Nihon
Monogatari.
Monogatari.
So, and I worked on programs. This is
Oh, yeah.
Otto's logo, and this was a magazine that the whole magazine was about Opel. So I did things. We started the internet website, the homepage in 1994, and we became the number one automotive company that had a homepage, a website. And more, I'll be happy to talk in the future events.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
Yes, we would love you to have we would love to have you again. Yes, and hear that story. Yes.
So, yes, it is nice that Japan has discipline, and there are very few people that want to create some disruptive marketing,
Right.
and everything stays stable, and people don't like too much noise. Unexpected things, Japanese become very alarmed. So
Yeah.
for
Don't
Western
mess with the
companies,
harmony.
that's right. But the harmony can be maintained while you do certain shifts changes,
Right.
and you don't have to go against the same. This is the Aikido principle that you don't block someone's attack, you
Redirect.
absorb
Yeah. Yeah.
and redirect and
Yeah.
make it into a technique. So using that, nobody was doing internet marketing, and as probably Maya-san may know more, but Opel in Europe in those days was sponsoring three football teams:
Yeah.
AC Milan, Bayern München, and Paris Saint-Germain. And Japan was getting crazy, it was rising in the soccer boom, football boom.
Yeah.
So I brought the Euro Cup champion AC Milan to Japan, to Tokyo Dome, filled the stadium. They played against Shimizu S-Pulse. And you could see that about 50,000 of the spectators, they all had Opel jerseys, cheering Opel. Cars were not selling that many at that time. So the brand promotion. So this is not attacking the competition.
Right. It's
We
not
went
disruptive. Yeah.
straight to the the death angle, and they didn't even know that it was happening. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's we've talked about that before, the idea of I once did a translation of an advertisement, and I was I put in English. They were basically saying we're disruptors, but they weren't saying it, but they were implying it strongly in the message. So in the title, I used disrupting, and this was in the U.S. too. It was a Japanese company advertising in New York, right? They just did not want to accept the word disrupt because that's taboo. Like you said, you can find a space to move into and be innovative without ruining everything. Like in America, we like to blow it up and start from scratch. They don't like to blow stuff up here, right? So I think that's yeah. So you wrote this book on Aikido. I want to cover some of Aikido because that was in our title today, and I know some people tuned in to listen. So where did you get the inspiration to actually write the book?
well, I studied under one of the last disciples of the founder of Aikido, and thanks to him, my Aikido became somewhat disruptive too. It's not the typical Aikido taught in Japan. Japanese Aikido level is very high,
Yes.
and I'm not denying that. But my sensei, Kanai Sensei, had a very different way to move the opponents. And he was trying to copy the founder of Aikido, but he developed into something different. And so I thought I would write a book, technical Aikido, talking about the differences or the things that I learned from this Kanai Sensei. But in when I started writing or thinking, this was the time during the COVID, and I had to do classes online, and my core students stayed with me, and we were spending hours and hours via Zoom. And it is very difficult to do a technique alone and show how it's done. So I started to delve deeper and saying, let's try to use the human body and start from the toes and go to the knee, go to the hip, and so forth. And in order for me to write about the different sections of the body, how it functions, I started to compare with other Japanese martial arts and so forth. And then I started to realize that there was a very common part that combined something very typical to Japan. And I can give you one example. And I always highlight the need to have the front of the foot very active, not the heel, but the front. And I found I can quote you from this is one of the first Westerners who chronicled Japanese lifestyle and shoes was a Jesuit named Louis Frois, who observed this in 1585, even before the Pilgrim Fathers came to the U.S. And he said, our shoes, boots, and slippers have soles that are separate from the uppers. Japanese tabi have no separate sole and are made of a continuous piece of leather. And historians debate if the tabi shoes were made of leather, but the observation follows. In Europe, it would be ridiculous to wear shoes with half the foot sticking out. In Japan, this is considered most stylish, and bonzes, monks, women, and the elderly wear shoes that fit the entire foot. So I started finding things like that. And even, let me quote another one from, this is from Lafcadio Harn, an American that goes to Japan and becomes Japanese. And he says the tabi, the white digitated stocking, gives to small Lightfoot a mythological aspect. The white cleft grace of the foot of a faunus. Glad or bare, the Japanese foot has the antique symmetry. It has not yet been distorted by the infamous foot gear, which has deformed the feet of Occidentals. And continues, the whole population is moving on tiptoe, and the multitudinous twinkling of the feet of the verge of the sunlit road is an astonishment. All those feet are small, symmetrical, light as the feet of figures painted on Greek vases, and the step is always taken toes first. Indeed, with Geta, it would be taken no other way. So if you start seeing how the Westerners observed how Japanese walked, and even when we do Aikido or sumo, when you see the body shape of the ideal body shape of the Westerners fighting man, big shoulders, it's a reverse triangle, whereas the Japanese are like pyramid, the base is strong.
Yeah.
And it is something that the kimono, the
Right.
outfit that Japanese wore, as you know, they didn't even have tailors that would measure your shoulders and do this. Everything became one piece held by an obi in the center of the body. And if you rotate the body too much, upper and lower twisting like this, the obi goes berserk. So you need to maintain the center of your body relatively firm, and that you couldn't make big steps. So the Japanese learned to walk with the knees slightly bent. And in Aikido, it's the same. You don't lock your knees. You always relax and walk. So even modern Japanese women, I think, even though they are not wearing kimono anymore, but their walking patterns are quite different from Western women that move their legs from the waist. They can
Right.
stretch. Japanese tend to bend the knees, and even the funny thing is that Japanese women, when they dress in kimono today, they are having difficulty because they cannot walk like their grandmothers used to walk.
Like their
So
grandmother.
there is a great transition, and this was something that allowed me to look into each of the techniques of Aikido and how to do that. Sorry
The
for a long.
no, that's interesting about the transition, because I feel like I agree. That's a really good observation about the triangle, right, versus the reverse triangle. But I also saw, even when I was a student in the 80s, I would get on the train in the morning, and all the guys who are my age were my size. And I'm short. I'm 5'6", right? But the next generation of kids going to high school were like 6 inches taller than us. And it was a different body. It seems like a different body type has evolved. I don't know if it's diet. They don't do seiza like they used to anymore. Have you seen that shift as well?
Yes, even it's funny that many Japanese instructors that have moved overseas, many start having trouble with their knees.
Oh,
And Aikido has a lot of sitting techniques, suwari waza, as we call,
yeah,
and you're basically rotating through the knees. It's very difficult to explain unless you see it in
yeah.
video. But now, many of the instructors older than 60 years old, Japanese that have gone overseas, cannot do it.
Yeah.
And I presume that if I were to go to Japan and go to some memorial events, someone's after passing so many years after dying, you go to the temple. In my time, when I was younger, for my grandmother and things like that, I had to sit on the floor for the 2 hours or so that Bonsan was doing his sutra, mantra, or whatever. Nowadays, they line up chairs.
I just went to
So
one the other night. Yes. Yeah.
I see. And
Yeah.
the toilets now, Japan has gone with the Toto, they have gone crazy with sophistication and high technology. Nobody squats anymore.
Right.
So,
Right.
and if you look at the Japanese samurai before, they wouldn't use the upper body to march or to walk, because the fact of moving your arms made your sword gradually become loose as you did that. So the Japanese, when you say kata, when you use the shoulder, it means that you are trying to show off and you want to impose fear over someone. It becomes like that. Japanese traditional idea is to relax and lower your shoulders. It's more centric. So there are so many things we can talk.
Yeah.
And it was balancing motion, I think, whether it's in ballet or dance, other tango, you always need to have balance. Without balance, it doesn't. Well, you cannot complete the rotation or anything. But I felt that Aikido would promote the balance in motion through activities like this. So,
Have you know? Yes, because of these differences between the ways Western people and Asian people, Japanese people carry themselves or have carried themselves traditionally. Have you noticed that there are some difficulties when you teach Aikido to Western trainees?
yes. Well, it is amazing that Aikido requires very diligent efforts. You cannot achieve in one day. So gradually, people learn how to do all the things that I think traditionally the samurai used to do, the movements and so forth. Whether they implement that in the street, that's another thing. But Japanese used to, as we were talking about the frontal part of the feet using, the Japanese tended to use gravity to move forward. So you're leaning forward. In the West, the need for heels, I think probably you know that in Middle Ages in Europe, people would throw their toilet things to the street, and people needed to have high heels to walk under undesirable places. Even Versailles didn't have a bathroom until much, much later. So, and the shoes were very tight. So I'm focusing to my students to learn basically the movements that probably were implemented for centuries in Japan. So it's a different way of thinking. And I think initially they don't know what to do, but gradually they learn.
But that context is so important now, because if I were studying Aikido, I would want to know what you just said. And to follow up on Maya's question, have you found that people who do take Aikido just through practicing it and the repetition, that they develop a more muscular lower body? You know, your glutes, your thighs, your calves. Have you seen that effect?
I think so. And I don't force people to do seiza or shiko, the knee walk, because not everybody can do it. But those that can do it, they start doing. And I think their stability becomes much stronger. And this is something that goes back to my sixth grade time that I lost in sumo against all my classmates except one. Suddenly I feel that I'm teaching how not to be the weak Kei, how to have the stability. And the people that know my Aikido would know that thanks to Kanai Sensei, my Aikido is on the dynamic side and stable. So, and I would like to continue because for me, it's being 75 at this time, it makes sense that I continue to do that to keep my body healthy.
Yeah.
Because
well, it's working. You look young.
Thank you.
It's working. So,
no, it's they say aging comes from your legs. So, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're getting toward the end, but you told a little. It was a little anecdote when we were talking offline about your observations related to like the lower body and balance and how we carry ourselves in the original Shogun made by Americans, and then the newer one with Japanese in control. I believe you made some observations on how people were getting up and walking and sitting, and I thought that was a really interesting
Oops.
anecdote.
Maya-san disappeared.
Yeah, mine did. Well, we're gonna have to carry the torch without her until she comes back.
It is true that if you look at the many of the movies from the 1950s or early 60s, you see that when the scenery is in the living room or the living quarters and they're sitting, and the way that women or men stand up from that sitting position is so amazingly elegant and effortless. And that is something that nowadays, if people were to do that, they would say "yokoisho" or.
My wife says that all the time.
So when you sleep on the floor, you have breakfast on the floor, you study on the floor, you eat lunch and dinner on the floor, and you go to the bathroom and the traditional Japanese toilets where you have to squat. The amount of squatting that the Japanese had to do in the old days, I think, was very, very high. And I remember that people used to say, I don't think it's a term used today, 立ってるものは親でも使え. If someone is already standing up, even if it's your parents, use them to bring something, right?
Right.
But that means that the people were up and down, up and down. So if you're up, please, can you go bring a beer from the kitchen? Type thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when I first got here, again, late 70s, 1977, one of the first things that jumped out at me is walking down the street, and it could be people conversing in front of a bar, it could be construction workers taking a break. And I remember groups of people squatting, and they're just chatting in the squat position in lieu of a chair, right? That's your chair. You squat. And of course, sometimes, smoking cigarettes or whatever, but it was such a common thing. And I can squat. I just can't, I never felt relaxed in that position. I can do it. There's a lot of Americans who can't even do that, but I never felt relaxed,
But
Yes.
that's throughout Asia, no?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Oh, no doubt.
I'm
No
sure.
doubt.
And also nowadays, when I walk in, throughout the town, and in front of junior high schools and high schools, I can still see students who have finished their classes. They are sitting on the ground and talking. It's not like they sit on, let's say, something else. There are no chairs, there are no benches. So they sit on the ground and they just chat. So they do not squat. Many of them do not squat, but it's so natural here. I was surprised because back home, we're always careful. If you sit on the ground, you probably dirty your clothes, so it's not good, and it's not good manners, and this and that. We have all these biases, right? And here in Japan, it's so natural. Just nobody cares, and that's what people do whenever there is nothing else available. When I say nothing else, it's chairs or benches.
Yeah, but you're right. You don't see the squat very much. And the reason I noticed the other day, my wife did a stroll around town as we do every day. And we walked by a place and a lady was in the front squatting, and Kunami just went, Natsukashi. Like that brings back memories. We hadn't seen it in such a long time. So yeah.
Well, that is exactly why I say even Japanese senseis going overseas, those that moved overseas, they got comfortable lifestyle, sitting on chairs and never doing seiza in the dojo, but not much more than when you bow. So it is very easy to lose it. So,
Yeah, that flexibility is very easy to lose and very difficult to regain afterwards. It takes time and effort.
Do you have a copy of your book? Can you show us the title? Put it in front of your camera just so we can all see it, and also how to get it. There you go. Yep, got it. Balance in motion.
yes. People can get it in Amazon for the time being. And I think it's available in ebook as well.
It is, yes.
Ebook, apparently some people may have difficulty, but I have tried, and I have the ebook version as well. You may have to use a different process to be able to read it, but I managed to read it as well. So,
Yes, I wanted also to add it is available on the Japanese Amazon site as well. So you don't have to, yes, and that is also good because it also means that you get it if you order the physical book, the paper book, then you get it just within a couple of days. You don't have to wait for 10 days or 2 weeks to get it delivered from the United States. So please remember that too.
And lastly, a shout out to William Ishimura. He made a comment. Nice vision of Tabi and feet. Reminds me of a Netflix series called Rikuo. So I'll have to check it out.
Rikuo, yes, it's a fiction, but it's very good. Actually, I forgot the name of. In the 1950s, there was a Japanese runner that ran in Boston Marathon, and he ran with Tabi. And American journalists, sports journalists, were intrigued by the shoes that he was wearing, and they wanted to see if his feet of the runner was like human feet, which is silly, but
okay, not like alien feet.
Of course, I was in the Sento once in Japan. A little kid came up behind me, looked at the front of me, and said, "Oh, onaji da." So he was really surprised by that.
great ending.
He saw our common humanity.
That's very good.
Yes. Well, thank you. We have one more comment which came just now from Timothy Langley. Yes, saying, Kei is awesome. What a great interview. I learned a lot and received lots of inspiration too. Oh, sorry. Okay. The rest is about my cat.
No, we had two special guests. We had Kei and we had Maya's cat.
I'm sorry. She she's usually very shy in front of the camera, and today I don't know why, but she really wanted to come into the room and be here. So probably Izawa Sensei, it's because of you.
But we want to have you on again and again, so I hope you won't get mad
Yes.
at us if we bother you every now and then. But I enjoy it. I could listen to you forever, you know. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You.
I think in some ways we have similarities. You came from Bulgaria and USA, and even though I was Japanese, I went to Japan, and we had to adapt and learn. So we share some similar experiences, I believe.
And I love about your story, and I find it myself, is you adapted, but you didn't just become Japanese. You figured out a way to do it in your own authentic way where you could add value. And, you know, sometimes you bend the rules, but you do it your way. And I found that it made me a better person, learning to adapt, but without abandoning who I was. And to do that, you got to figure out who you are. I'm still figuring it out, but I got closer and closer as I get older to my authentic self. And that's one of the lessons Maya and I like to tell people. Don't try to be Japanese. You'll just creep them out. You have to adapt and be authentic because the Japanese value authenticity. And
Yes.
that's the trick, you know, like how do you adapt but stay true to who you are? And I think everybody should aspire to find their own sweet spot. So
I agree. And Japan is going through great transformation, and it's thanks to people like you too, that probably create the proper bridge for more international people arriving in Japan, and Japan has to adapt to that as well. So it's not only one way. I think it has to be
Yeah.
the good part of Japan. I hope it stays, but there are certain things that Japan is very square.
yeah,
Right.
and Japan needs to change, of course, but I can't change Japan. All I can do is adapt and, you know, connect with human beings one on one and win hearts and minds one at a time. And I agree Japan needs to change, but I can't control that change. All I can do is control how I interact with Japan and hope that something good rubs off and vice versa, which it always does, you know.
Well, but you two are doing a wonderful job in Japan, and maybe I'm changing the way that people understand why certain Japanese Aikido moves are based on Japanese culture. And it's like I write in the book, like capoeira from Brazil is based on the culture of Brazil.
Right.
So you cannot generate that capoeira movement outside of Brazil. Oh, of course, you can learn the techniques, but the basis, the basic background, the historical core is something that history has taught them. So,
Right on.
Yeah.
We already went
Yeah.
way over our time, but we had a flurry of comments. So thank you, Timothy, for yours and Patricia.
Also, yes.
Yaro.
May I read? Yes,
Yeah.
Patricia's. She okay. Probably you have met Patricia Izawa Sensei because she writes. I was with Izawa Sensei when he first returned to the Aikido dojo mat in Boulder, Colorado. Great to see him again, and I'm looking forward to reading his new book from Tokyo. Yes.
thank you.
So
Thank
thank
you,
you very
Patricia.
much, Patricia, and thank you,
Yeah.
William. Thank you, Timothy. And
Yeah.
Isawa Sensei, thank you so very much for today. And I'm very much looking forward to having you with us again
Yeah.
and again, as you
Yeah. I
said.
can't wait.
So, yes, yeah,
So
cannot
hurry
wait
up,
for
come
that.
visit us. We got to get together, you know, when you do come.
Yes,
Not this year, but definitely next year, I'll be in Japan. If
Very
I
cool.
change my plans, I will let you know.
Right on. Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
ありがとうご
thank
ざ
you
います。
very much.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
for
And
hanging with us, everybody. We went
yes,
over a little bit late, but it was so much fun and interesting. We couldn't help ourselves.
we
Thank you.
couldn't do it. Thank you. This was Balance in Motion, today's episode of Japan Expert Insights podcast with Kei Izawa Sensei, the master of Aikido and also, well, let's say former but still very active member, let's say, of the International Aikido Organization. Well, if you haven't connected with him, please reach out to him on LinkedIn or Facebook and be in touch. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, and we'll see you
Thank you,
next time.
everyone.
Thank you, Dan. Bye bye.
Thank you.